Hello everyone and welcome back to Age of Nagash, which is a channel dedicated to Age of Sigmar. Now, in this video, it's going to be one of the army archives, and we're going to be looking at the Wanderers, or as they were, the Wood Elves in Warhammer Fantasy. And to join me, I have got Nathan from the Great Book of Grudges themselves to help talk through the lore of the Wood Elves. How are you doing today, Nathan?
Good, good. Just looking forward to seeing how the Wood Elves have changed, to be honest.
Yeah, they've taken a bit of a different role in Age of Sigmar, which will be interesting. We'll get towards that at the end of the video, I suppose. But so if you could start us off, Nathan, how did the Wood Elves come about? Because obviously they stemmed from the High Elves, didn't they? Or they wouldn't call themselves the High Elves, but
Yeah.
that race initially.
So, for all intents and purposes, Wood Elves are High Elves. The same as Dark Elves are High Elves. They've just kind of changed a little bit. As far as the lore is putting it out there, because a lot of things have changed and there's a lot of conflicting lore. Remember, this is Games Workshop after all, so sometimes it kind of jumps up and down. But
Yeah,
in terms of that, the Wood Elves were pretty much high elven colonies. A lot of them settled around the lands that would eventually become Bretonia, Athaloran, and so on. Now, everything was okay. We had some power struggles. The Dark Elves came into effect because Malekith basically didn't get what he wanted. And from then, the Wood Elves and the High Elves pretty much just carried on living. The only problem was that the Dark Elves were very smart, and there was a little bit of trickery involved, to which the Wood Elves and the High Elves, or better yet said, what would eventually become the Wood Elves, ended up in a very strange war with the Dawi. This ended up becoming the War of Vengeance, or the War of the Beard, as we know.
I was gonna say I recognise it as the War of the Beard because then the Dark Elves basically disguised themselves as well elves from Ulthuan, and attacked the Dari, wasn't it? Was that how it
Yeah,
started?
that's correct. There'd be trading routes going into the new colonies. The Dark Elves would kill the traders, and from there it started off getting the Dawi kind of angry. And as we know, don't get a Dawi angry because they'll come back with a vengeance.
Yep, and being the elves as they were, the elves of Ulthuan, and in case you're watching it from my channel, guys, don't know what Ulthuan is, it's basically imagine our globe, and there is a continent in between Europe and North America. That's Ulthuan, and that was like the home of the High Elves. And because obviously, I'm sure most of you guys know this, the High Elves are quite. They don't really like to admit that they're having a little bit of internal trouble, do they? So they didn't tell the dwarves that there was a bit of a civil war going on.
At all, they didn't tell them, which, to be honest, that's what confused me. At this point, you'd be thinking, oh, we've got these allies, the dwarves. Maybe they can help us deal with Malekith. But they just kept as quiet as a mouse, which was absolutely like just confusing.
And the first offensive, what the Dark Elves did against the Dowie, didn't the Dowie sort of go to? I don't know if they went to Ulthuan, but they did go to the High Elves, didn't they, to ask basically what was going on.
Yeah, so the Dawi were like obviously concerned as to what was going on, and they sent, I believe it was the brother of the High King or the cousin of the High King to Ulthuan. I should know this considering I just did a lore video on this just a few days ago. But they sent them there, and they basically demanded some trinkets and gold and stuff as reparations, which, understandable. But the
Yep.
High Elves at that point were, they were still kind of angry with everything that was going on, and they still wouldn't admit what was going on. So they shaved the dwarf's beard and sent him back to Karazakarak and just basically said, if you want your gold, if you want your reparations, you need to come, and I'm talking about the High King himself, he'll need to go to Ulthuan specifically and beg.
And obviously, there's a lot to take in there for the dwarves, but also just the fact of having your beard shaved off. Surely that is the most humiliating thing that can happen to a dwarf, pretty much.
Pretty much, yeah. So the dwarves naturally got angry and launched an invasion on the High Elf colonies. At this point, Ulthuan did fight back. They were kind of holding back the Dark Elves and fighting in what would later be called Bretonia. Eventually, the dwarves overran the High Elves and just basically beat them back. The colonies still kind of stood. Some of them were completely destroyed. And everything seemed okay, because the war had officially ended with the High King killing one of the Elven kings. That's all cool, but the problem was that at this time, Malekith was sitting in the shadows kind of waiting, as Dark Elves tend to do. So with that, the Dark Elves launched an invasion of Ulthuan. Many High Elves were recalled, but some of them decided no, they're going to stay in the colonies, and they're going to actually retreat further into what would later be called Athaloran and so on.
Oh, and then that's where the Wood Elves come into it, isn't it?
Yeah, so at this point, they kind of broke off ties with the High Elves of Ulthuan, and they stopped calling themselves High Elves. They actually ended up calling themselves Wood Elves, or Azrae, as we now know them.
Yes, it is. And they did they make a sort of pact with the spirits of the forest? Is that?
Eventually, they did. At first, they kind of went into Athaloran, and we know that Athaloran is kind of... It's very hard to explain because itself is very strange. If we see it as a forest, inside it's this temporal kind of timey-wimey stuff. If you think of it as a Doctor Who reference, like the whole TARDIS thing, that everything's bigger on the inside.
Yep. And isn't it like time travels at a different speed as well, doesn't it, in the...
Time travels in a different speed in depending what location you are in Athaloran. Athaloran is a big place itself, and each place travels differently, each place is different. It's absolutely bizarre on how the actual mechanics of it work, but there's a lot of differences in there. So what might be 2 years inside Athaloran might actually be maybe 50 years outside, or vice versa.
And because of that, I mean, this is a bit of a long shot, and I probably am wrong, but could it be like a small realm of chaos? Is that possible?
Well, from what we realise in the end of it is very similar to the Realm of Chaos, but we know that they have their own gods there, which kind of act as their own... It's like, think of it like the Horned Rat. He's got his own realm, but it's not a realm of chaos until pretty much he gets accepted into the Pantheon. So it's absolutely bizarre. It's very, very similar.
But it's actually has a place on the physical plane, doesn't it? Because obviously it's part of the world that was, like the globe.
Yeah, I mean, I would classify Athaloran itself, like the inner part of Athaloran, as maybe a portal.
Oh, right, and then that would also explain how it is bigger on the inside than on the outside it appears.
Yeah, because we do have a map of Athaloran, and it's very big, but we know that there's all these things going on in there where... did you play the mini campaign for the Wood Elves in the first Warhammer Total War?
I did, yeah.
It's absolutely massive for what we see, but then there's a little bit more into it where everything just kind of changes. We know that each area has its own weather system. Some places it's eternally winter, some places eternally spring. It's absolutely bizarre when you actually think of it.
Yeah, how it has permanent seasons depending on where you are. I mean, I can't remember the name of the permanent winter one, but I definitely remember it was the south of that map. But yeah, there's ones of permanent summer as well. And it really shows that it does not play by the same laws as the rest of reality.
Yeah, exactly, which is why I'd say that the Beastmen are so drawn to it. Because we know that the Beastmen have led many incursions into Athaloran. Morgul the Shadowgave just constantly wanting to go in there and corrupt the Oak of Ages.
Yeah, and he is an absolute pain to deal with in Total War.
I love him.
Yeah, I haven't played him yet, played as him, but I remember when I used to fight against him, and I'm when there's that really, really tight balancing act, towards the end of the game, where it's you just go over the line and you start beating back the enemy and you're starting to win, and then the enemy starts to rout and then you win the game. But that's a very fine line to cross where it could easily go the other way. When I play against that beast lord, I used to find that a lot of my elite units I used to rely on winning me the game towards the end would then turn into Chaos Spawn.
Yeah.
And eat me, which is very interesting. So that's Athaloran itself, and then what role do the Wood Elves have within it?
Well, at the beginning they kind of live there like a house. It's quite interesting. That was their home. They didn't really know too much about the forest spirits and so on. Eventually it became known to them that the forest itself is alive. So from there they kind of started working with the forest. It's very strange because the forest itself is indeed somewhat sentient.
Okay, so it's as a as like a collective mind.
Yeah, it's very strange. And I guess the forest at this point realize maybe it's good that they've come in. It's very strange where the wood elves live with the forest and the forest lives with the wood elves. And there's a little restrictions. We do know of some of the tree men and so on turning around, like Dryker, for example, who absolutely hates the wood elves and wants them killed. But we know that they have worked together. And at this point, the wood elves have seen more of an attunement to nature than their other gods.
Yeah, they've gone sort of, like you said, that more sort of natural way, and they take, obviously the spirits of Athaloran are generally quite capable of handling the defense of their forest themselves, but the wood elves really do play a part in sort of being that guardian force for the spirits of the forest.
Yeah, it's become pretty much, I wouldn't say a proper alliance, but more of an alliance of convenience. The wood elves need a place to stay, and the woods themselves need protection, because obviously they're next to Bretonia. Bretonians want the trees to craft buildings. There's obviously rampaging beastmen, greenskins. There's a lot of undead around the region. So it does help to have some very capable archers keeping the woods safe.
Definitely. And yeah, but also the things like I say, it's like an alliance of convenience. And I'd say like probably the elves are probably the only race that the spirits of the forest would even give that opportunity to. I think most other races, they would, like, especially humans, they would just kill, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I mean, we've heard of, like, for example, Bretonians going into the forest and getting slaughtered directly within 2 seconds. But the Wood Elves themselves have had a nice alliance. It gives them more freedom to roam around. As long as they protect it, the forest will protect them. And it kind of helps with them because the Wood Elves themselves are really, really isolationist. If we think Ulthuan likes to keep to themselves, the Wood Elves keep it to such a level that some people don't even believe Wood Elves exist.
And they're actually in the old world as well. They're not in their own little separate continent.
Exactly. I mean, they're literally right there where everything is happening, but they just like to keep to themselves. And it's a shame because we know there's Wood Elves within the Empire. We know that there's some way down in the Southlands too, but they kind of do the same thing. It's very hard to find Wood Elves outside of these regions.
Yeah, they don't really have colonies in much other places. I mean, I know there's some that pop up in Total Warhammer, but I know that's not entirely lore accurate. So there's not really many other colonies, is there, that are about in the world?
Oh, well, there are some. Like, if you're referring to, I believe they're called in Total Warhammer, the Bowmen of Orion or something like that?
The ones that are in the Southlands?
No, that's an actual colony.
Oh, that's an actual colony. Oh, okay, fair one.
It's very, very unknown in the lore, but it seems, from what I can recall, they were basically sent down there and they kind of just settled, which is nice because it shows that they are trying to get a foothold in other locations, but to me, it just seems like they're spreading out way too thin.
Yeah, which is obviously... I mean, they're not being elves. They're not the most numerous race, are they?
No, they're pretty much dying out. Like, if we go by lore standards, obviously they split into a massive amount of groups because we had the High Elves themselves that split into the Dark Elves, and then these ones that split into the Wood Elves. So we've already had 2 massive splits, and then there's obviously all the wars that happened. There's the War of the Beard itself was very, very taxing on the Elven race. And everything else, the coming of chaos, the incursions, a lot of them did suffer at hands of that. Naturally, also, the Wood Elves in Athaloran have been taking beating upon beating a lot due to just the determination of beastmen, if you just want to put it very lightly.
Yeah, that's like I say, like when I've played Total Warhammer, I know that's not a direct, accurate comparison, but I think they portray it very well with the beastmen just sending constant incursions into the forest that you have to deal with. And the other thing to note is that the Wood Elves, they're not essentially an aggressive race, are they? A little bit similar to what we said about the dwarves last time, but the Wood Elves, they're quite happy just to, like you said, they're isolationists. They're quite happy just to stick to themselves and mind their own business, sort of.
Yeah, I mean, they'll fight. They are very competent fighters, and I used to actually fear Wood Elf players in the tabletop. They were absolutely devastating. but like as long as you're pretty much staying away, just don't get too close, type of thing.
Yeah, because they're very much. I mean, like we said, like if some Bretonian children went into the forest of Ofelias and they came across the sort of like Drytras, like kin, like the Dryads and stuff like that. The Dryads might make the children die in not very nice ways. However, the Wood Elves, if it was like a Glade Guard, they might, I don't know, they might fire a couple of warning shots off just to try and scare them away. They sort of, they don't take pride in cruelty, I think.
Well, they can be quite cruel, but you do have a point. They will be very, like, they'll give you the benefit of the doubt in very rare circumstances. Like, if a small child walked in, they'll sometimes just guide them out. But if it's, like, a group of Bretonians, say some questing knights and so on, that might look like a sign of aggression. So naturally, by that point, they'll be like, trotting in or whatever, and a couple of hundred arrows will fly at them.
Yeah. And that's the thing, it's like, talking about how they haven't got a huge population, the Wood Elves, they also very much play defensively, because when they are in a fight, a lot of the times in Ofelias, and it's very much on their terms in their defense, isn't it? They will try and use, like you said, like 100 arrows might come at them, but it might be from not that many Glade Guards. They very much, from what I understand of the Wood Elves, they sort of use their Glade Guard as the first sort of line of defense, and then they won't really use any of their sort of best units until right at the very end, until there's like no other hope. They try and exhaust the enemy in a like sort of guerrilla warfare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're very competent in fighting within trees and forests and so on, which it plays to their benefit. Like, even the Beastmen, who have been known to fight in trees, if you put Beastmen versus Wood Elves generally are quite more competent. They're faster. They're much more competent with bows. They'll kill you from afar. They'll kill you from the shadows too. It's very hard to be able to get them down in their own turf. Now, if you came out and brought them out into an open field, that's when things start getting a little bit different.
Yeah, they don't have. Well, they have some things, don't they? Like, because back in Fantasy, where they had the Treemen, and they had is it Treekin as well?
Yeah, they've got loads of trees. Obviously, they've got very competent cavalry too, which are mostly stag riders. They have a lot of different things. Obviously, they've got they ride on giant eagles and so on. It's not like their army is like lacking on anything, but they were better with just their general archery.
Exactly, they're not really. If you looked at it as like a big battle scale army, and like I should say, a massive open area, they're not exactly going to go toe to toe with that incredibly armored, warriors of chaos army. That is a lot more sort of grindy army, and in an open, battlefield. Whereas like the Wood Elves would use, like we're saying, like terrain and all that, very much to their own advantage. Like, know the land to be able to beat the enemy as well, rather than just relying on brute force, essentially.
Definitely. They have been known to go out in open war. I mean, we have seen them a lot in the end times, especially after when we had that really weird scenario where the Wood Elves then joined with the High Elves, that joined with the Dark Elves, and then we had an army of all three. Wow, my voice went there. Of all three. But it's still very strange. Like, you'd use them for what they were for. For example, you did have like war dances and so on, which are pretty much berserkers. You could use them next to, say, for example, Blackguards or Nagarond. But that was back then in the end times where, let's just face it, the High Elf, or let's just call it the Elven armies, I think it was called the Host of the Eternity King, that was like top tier at that point.
Yeah, I imagine being able to combine all those different things, which basically every one of those Elven armies, they did have a, naturally an army always has a weakness, isn't it? Like, it's great at this, but it's not very good at this. Being able to combine all of those eliminated quite a few of those weaknesses.
Yeah, I mean, you see players grinning, just grinning, this cheeky grin, going, yeah, I'm bringing the Host of the Eternity King, and you'd just be there like, cheat.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it's a competitive army, but yeah, so that's, without going into super detail, that's would you say that's pretty much a summary of what the Wood Elves are like in fantasy?
Yeah, I'll be going into more detail in a few videos that I'll be doing in the future. But like, I wanted to give a little brief here, so then we could go on to what did you call them? The Wanderers?
The Wanderers, yes, as they are in Age of Sigmar, and obviously that is quite a contrasting name to what we know of the Wood Elves to be very defensive and very much, guarded. Athelora in that forest, they hold it so dear. But in Age of Sigmar, obviously, Athelora, as I've explained in Age of Sigmar, it's very much as a new setting. Even the lore, I think it's only been around for like a couple of thousand of years, but it's sort of been quite vague, the history. So everything's new. So there isn't a big forest where all the Wood Elves stay in. They are very much divided across all the mortal realms, which I think there is God, I don't want to get the number on, but I think there's something like 9 mortal realms or something. And so they're not stationed all in one place, and they move around a lot, hence why they're called the Wanderers. And essentially, the first bit of significant lore for them in Age of Sigmar is that they used to have a very close alliance with the Sylvaneth, which are basically the forest spirits, as they've been split into 2 armies. So the elves of the Wood Elves are now the Wanderers, and the basically the tree people are now called the Sylvaneth. And they again, they had a good, strong, to this point, I'd call it an alliance with the Sylvaneth because of how much history they've had together. Going back to Athelor, there's so much trust within them. However, when the realm of life, which is where the Wood Elves and the Sylvaneth were mainly based, and the Sylvaneth's goddess, if you like, was Alariel. I'm sure you know Alariel from fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
However, when the realm of life where they were, where they lived, came heavily under assault from Nurgle. As you can imagine, if there's a whole realm of life, Nurgle very much would like a piece of that, and then he likes a little bit more piece, and then he just wants the whole thing. So as this realm basically became infected with, pus and disease, and basically, all sorts of nasty bacteria from Nurgle, the Wanderers did stand with the Sylvaneth and Alariel to try and fight back Nurgle, but when the tide sort of turned and it looked like very much that the realm was going to become overwhelmed with the forces of Nurgle, the Wanderers basically abandoned Alariel and the Sylvaneth to their fate, and left the realm, and basically wandered off. And because of this, the Sylvaneth and Alariel herself, going back to where it is like now, like I say, the Sylvaneth and Alariel, they are very much, they will still fight alongside as the with the Wanderers. However, they no longer hold dear the once great alliance they had. All the trust they built up over the years is now gone. So it's very much a fresh start, which the Wanderers do really want to try and rebuild that. Unfortunately, though, as you can imagine, if you're it's a little bit like that bit in Lord of the Rings where there's the massive battle at the start of the movies, and later you find out that one of the armies that was meant to turn up didn't and fled to the mountains, and obviously they're the army of ghosts.
Yeah.
And it's that feeling, isn't it, where it's like when your time, the greatest need, like your basically your best friends, like when you really need them, your allies, to come to your aid, that's the one time they abandoned you. And obviously trying to rebuild that friendship between you is going to take a long time. As Alariel and Sylvaneth, despite the Wanderers abandoning them, they did get reinforced by Sigmar with his Stormcast, and they are basically pushing back the chaos now and trying to really beat back the tide of Nurgle. And so that's basically the Wanderers now play a different role, as they're no longer so attached to the Sylvaneth. I'll say like one thing, army-wise, if you're playing the army, they might not share really any abilities with each other, but looks-wise, aesthetically, they look fantastic together. But the Wanderers now play a lot more of a skirmish role for the army of Order. Like I said, when it talks about the Dispossessed now in the Dwarves, now called Dispossessed in Age of Sigmar, similarly to the Wood Elves, now called the Wanderers, no longer sort of fight just for themselves. They sort of play a part of a bigger machine, being Grand Alliance Order, and that is dedicated to destroying chaos. So that is very much what the Wanderers play. They're no longer really like keep themselves isolated. They want to be in the fight. They want to try and push back chaos. And the role they play in the sort of all the armies of order is they play as pretty much like the best skirmishers they've got. So, like we're saying, their sort of tactics, using terrain against the enemy, using, like bowcraft and arrowcraft and, like range power to be able to take away the enemy. Like if there was an army of, being really broad here, but an army of like 100 chaos, warriors, let's just say, Order could send, like 100 or maybe a bit more of their finest soldiers to try and take down those 100 chaos warriors, or they could send a handful of wood elves to try and assassinate them and take them out via that way. And that's sort of the role they play. They also do this for like the greater good, if you like. So wanderers, as like I said, they're travelers, but it means like if there's a council or a group of wanderers traveling through the realms, they might do some work for one of the cities in the realms of order. Say, like, if we help you eliminate this chaos warband that's been, like plaguing your land, can we live and stay within the, the basically the safety of your, city? And so it's very much, they have a part to play, and they are now a lot more like travelers compared to being very much isolationists and staying in the same place as they were in fantasy. So that's pretty much all the lore there is for them now. Like I say, it's very new, so it might sound a bit vague. However, what I wish to say about Age of Sigmar is definitely going strength to strength for its lore, and they're definitely adding more to it. So I'm excited to see what comes next for the Wanderers. And in the game, they do translate as being able to do things like teleport from one board edge to another, hence being called I think that ability is called like Realm Wanderers, so being able to transport across the realms essentially. They can do that. They can also do things like run and shoot, so they're incredibly fast. Like if you're trying to chase them and you fail your charges, they're just going to shoot you and then run and then repeat the process again, basically. So it's nice to see how that's translated into rules as well. And like I say, I look forward to one day them getting an army book, which I'm sure they will, or the Elves United or something like that. That would be cool to see. So yeah, that's pretty much where they are in Age of Sigmar at the moment, which I can imagine is quite different to fantasy.
Well, a lot of their tactics are the same. I am looking over at the Elves page now in GW, and I've noticed that, a lot of their troops are there.
Yes, so you've got a lot of the named characters have gone because they're no longer in Age of Sigmar. And then troops, in what sort? So, your what was it? Weight Watchers, are they the best arch unit that what else have? That's right,
Yeah.
Yeah, they are now single heroes. They play a part as, which basically means that the unit's no longer there, but each one of those guys is one of the finest archers you'll get in the game. So almost you can turn one of them. It's a bit like they become like a minigun, really. They've got two different ways to shoot. They've got like precise shots. They've got like rapid fire, where they just basically throw a bunch of dice at the enemy, and your enemy has to make some save rolls. And if they fail them, lots of their little precious models will die. So there's been some translation over. When you say you're looking at the Elves page, it's actually a silent A, so they've managed to copyright it that way. So it's Elves, but it's I think it's pronounced Elves. I think it's I'm pretty sure it's a silent A.
GW, why?
Yeah, if it gets them what they need to do, fair enough. I mean, you obviously can't copy the word elf, can you? So, or elves. So they got to do what they got to do. But yes, so on that, basically, I think I said this when we talked about Dispossessed. Games Workshop recently has, like a few weeks before Christmas, they grouped a lot of the mini armies of Age of Sigmar into one category on the website. And some people speculated that meant, they're going to bring them back together. I'm pretty sure that's not going to be the case, not anytime soon anyway. I feel like they're just doing that to make it easier for parents to buy presents for their kids and stuff like that. But no, like I say, it might look a bit bare and stuff at the moment, similar to what I said about Dispossessed, but the Age of Sigmar, like I can say definitely from my point of view, it's definitely coming strength to strength. As when it first started, it was a little bit shaky. I think I've already mentioned that. However, it's been quite a while since then, and it's definitely a much better game for it. And the lore is getting there as well. And like I say, it's just it's not a case of like hopefully they'll get something. They will. It's just just playing a bit of a waiting game, really, and really that just sort of builds up more excitement for it. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So that'd be pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, it would be really cool if they started updating it a little bit, giving some units, maybe if they just recasted or made a new cast for some of the units that are missing, that would be good, not only for Sigmar players, but some fantasy collectors, like they did with the Moonclaw Glots. Is that what they're called?
Gloomspike kits, that's it.
That's it.
But the most of the Gloomspike kits, they're basically like in a sub faction of them is called the Moonclan Grots. So that's where you're getting that from, which are, your night goblins. And yeah, to be honest, with all the sort of older armies, loads of people are like, oh, they want loads of new models and units and all those sorts of things for when they finally get their army. And I understand that because people have been waiting quite a while for some of their armies. But for me, what they did with the Gloomspike Gits of the Night Goblins, I think that's like the best way to update a new army. New armies don't really need, sorry, not new armies, older armies. Older armies, when they're sort of given a touch up in Age of Sigmar, they don't need, from my point of view, like loads of different new units. Yeah, it's quite cool. They get like a new hero or a new unit here and there. But for me, it's just like, just update the models. Like the Squig Hoppers, their models became a bit old, so what they did is they just gave them new ones, and I think they probably tweaked the rules so they're a little bit better in the game now, which is super cool. They don't need to come up with new unit ideas. However, Sniffer Squigs are fantastic, and I am super glad that they came up with them.
Yeah, I mean, the ones that they updated, like the shooters, the Squig Hoppers, and so on, they are still the same size.
Yep.
So we can use them in fantasy.
Oh, that's good. So yeah, it translates onto that, isn't it? I mean, I know there is it the green skins they've got mailed to order at the moment?
Yeah, I think it just finished today.
Oh, okay, they've got. I know they had Azag the Slaughterer, didn't they, on his?
Yeah, they had Azag, Black Orc Big Boss, and a bunch of Gobbos, which is actually really nice because I've ordered them. I needed them for my collection.
Yeah, which is cool, and it's nice that they are doing this. Just out of interest, if you order one of those mailed to order because I haven't done it yet, does it take quite a long time for it to come to you?
Oh yeah, it takes ages. It's after you order, it takes 35 days, and then they ship it.
So it is generally made to order, then, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or it's taking them ages to try and find it in their warehouse.
They probably have to find it. But they're really good at that. Like, I've been purchasing a few units here and there from every made-to-order. Some of them are models from, like, 3rd edition, 4th edition upwards, so I'm taking advantage and just buying them as soon as I can.
Yeah, because you never know when they're going to be on sale again, if they're going to be on sale again.
Exactly.
And especially from Games Workshop, I extremely like... let's take the Azag the Slaughterer model on his Wyvern. Let's say, like... if you did miss out on this, like, and I don't want to rub it in your face, obviously, but as an example, if you didn't buy him because you think, oh, I'll wait until later, just remember how many other characters and heroes there are to make from, Warhammer Fantasy until they go, okay, second time round, let's go through all those heroes again. There's, I don't know, is that a year or more or 2 years or a long time?
We're currently in the 7th round of what they call the Legend series.
Okay, I haven't really been following that too much, so you probably know more about their schedule and what they plan to release.
Well, I make a video as soon as I hear something because I'm a collector. A lot of people who are subbed to my channel are collectors, so I make sure that they know it. Like the Beastman one was absolutely gorgeous. It had Morgul the Shadow Gave. It had Pestigors.
Who's the guy? I'm going to get the name wrong now, but basically the Centaur.
Yeah, they had I think Gorus.
Gorus, yeah, that's a cool model. I like that one.
Yeah, he's absolutely awesome, and it's an old model, so I wanted people to be aware of it. And obviously, these things we like you said, we might not see them again, and the only other option other than this would be eBaying or going to a recaster Russian site, which some of them are actually quite good, but it's not the same.
No, it's not the same, and like people on eBay, I mean, to be fair, some of the prices they charge, and if they sell for that price, that's absolutely fair enough. But you might really want a model, and it might have cost like, let's say, £5 or £10 originally from Games Workshop, and then you see it on eBay for like £80, and it's like,
I
I love it,
remember
but not that much.
there was one character, the original Archeon. So, as we know that Archeon now, his horse has magically turned into some dragon thing.
Yep.
But Drogba used to be a horse, actually, a demon horse. And I went on eBay because I had him, but I wanted a second because I wanted to start working on some conversions to get Grom the Conqueror as his own unit with a horse and so on. It was part of an expansion from way back then. And I think it was like £200. I was looking at it like, wow, for one model. And it's got like a bad paint job, so I've got to Dettol it and clean it up myself. It's like, that's fantastic.
Yes, it's crazy, isn't it? I mean, I was super lucky. Like about a year ago, probably now, or 9 months ago, I managed to find one of those models unbuilt for £15.
That's not bad at all.
I was super happy with that. Like, unbelievable. I mean, he's still not built because like it's one of those things where it's like he's so. I love the model, number one, and it's so like I want to convert it, but I don't want to ruin it. I've done things where I've taken like £70 worth of kits and like convert them all into basically one model, and like I'm willing to make that risk. But for something so sort of rare as the old Archaon model on his horse, it feels too risky. Like I'd love to convert him to something, like Slaneshify him basically as a sort of beautiful one done by someone I fought in a tournament who basically turned the horse into a stag. And it's like it got to the point where like I was playing this game for probably about 3 hours and got towards the end of it and I was like, wait, is that the Archaea model? And I was like, yeah. I was like, geez, I literally thought that this guy bought this model from like a third, like a different games company, and he just managed to get away with it because it looked that cool. But it's like, no, that's actually one of his conversions. And it's like, since seeing that, I know I won't be able to do anything on that good of a scale. So my Archaeon's going to stay in his box for now, just nice and safe in that.
Yeah, I totally get it. I've been trying to work on some conversions for my Chaos Dwarves, and I've got a lot of boxes. I did buy some stuff from Forge World and so on because, let's face it, the models look absolutely great. But it's the issue of when you're paying so much. Like, for example, let's go on to Forge World. There is a cannon there. I think it was the War Engine itself is about £70 or something, and you're there thinking, do I really want to convert this model?
Yeah, I understand that sort of thing. I've looked at a few things sometimes. I'm like, how can I convert even like some of the Skaven models? How can I try and convert them to things? Or like when I looked at doing an Emperor's Children's Army, but translate it into 40k and basically have the Emperor's Children use them as just Space Marines and try and have it as they're still loyalists. I know that's completely against the law, but I love the idea of that Slanesh, but they're sort of, instead of them all being really corrupted and looking like really chaotic, like a really sort of clean look to them, basically how they are in the Horus Heresy. So I thought about getting Emperor Children bits from Forge World and kit bashing them with, the new Primaris kits and stuff. And then I was thinking like that, it's actually probably going to cost a lot of money, even if just for the upgrade kits and stuff, if you want to have, like big size units of tactical Marines and stuff.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Which is, but yeah, it's one of those, I mean, I've fought against a fully painted Chaos Dwarf army at a tournament, and it was absolutely beautiful looking. And it was based in the realm of fire, so as you can guess, it's a realm that has lots of fire and volcanoes in it, and so the basing was really nicely done. And it's the first time I fought the Chaos Dwarfs, and happened to be in such a nice condition. So that was nice to see. Unfortunately, it was on Warhammer TV, and I got my army destroyed within about half an hour. However, it was a very, very nice game to play and a nice opponent to fight against.
Yeah, some players are just absolutely insane with how they use battle tactics. I played against a Chaos Dwarf player, and he absolutely demolished me within 4 turns.
Yeah, I mean, I think it happened over a year ago now, so I'm just trying to remember. I think what happened, basically in Age of Sigmar, you roll for priority. So let's say I finish up setting up my army first. I get to choose who goes first. Let's say I choose myself to go first. I have a game, or I have a turn, you have a turn, and then we roll again to see who takes the next turn. So that's how it works in Age. I personally like it because I like the risk reward. of it, because there's sometimes where you've absolutely got no chance of winning your games, and then suddenly you manage to get a double turn, and that's turned the game around for you. But there are other times where the enemy double turns you, and you get basically pummeled into the ground. So with the game I had on the Warhammer TV, like I said, fantastic game, but I was quite unlucky because I think I lost. So there's 5 turns in Age of Sigmar, and I think I only got the 5th priority. So basically, the opponent had control of the turn, rotations, and I played the army so risky because I basically had my Flare army, so it's basically Cryptoris from Fantasy, the new unit of them in Age of Sigmar, which instead of the Cryptoris having arms, they basically have wings and they become a different unit. And it's a unit that's very good at doing mortal wounds and all those sorts of things. And basically had a whole army of those and a Terrorgeist in it. And how I saw him, I was like, the guy's name, he's got like his podcast and stuff. His name's Ben Curry. He's a really, really good player. He organizes tournaments and stuff, and he's definitely a good opponent to fight against. And I was like, this guy has got so much more experience than me. I was like, the only way I'm going to win this is through luck. So I was like, and this is the best I've been doing in tournaments at that point. And I was like, right, so there's basically loads of terrain around that gives you bonuses, but there's a chance they give you a really negative effects. Like one of them was a terrain piece called Mystical that doesn't now, but what it used to do was if a unit's within 3 inches of it, roll a dice at the start of the turn. On a roll of a 2 to 6, they can reroll all their failed wound rolls. But if you roll a 1, that unit cannot do anything that turn apart from make save rolls. So quite risky because in Fantasy, is it like, do you roll to hit and then roll to wound? Is that?
Yeah, you roll to hit, you roll to wound, then there's all these modifiers, like for example, if you have a strength 5 weapon, I think it was -1 to your save modifier and so on.
Yeah, so it's like that in Age of Sigmar, so like minus into saves is called Rend Age of Sigmar. But basically I was like, right, okay, so if I can get my lovely Terrorgeist to reroll its wound rolls, if it gets a wound roll of a 6 for its jaws, it does 6 mortal wounds instead of its normal damage.
Ouch.
And it has 3 attacks. And I've done it before when I've managed to roll like 2 6s, and it's like 12 more wounds to the enemy. It's really nasty. So it's like, if I can get him doing that reroll and all failed wound rolls, it's really going to enhance the chance of it. So I put him next to this scenery piece. Unfortunately, turn 1, he rolled a 1 for that scenery piece, so he couldn't do anything. The next turn, he rolled a 1, so he couldn't do anything. And I believe the next turn, he also rolled a 1. And he was about a quarter of my army.
Ouch.
And yeah, him basically not doing anything until what are those like half centaurs and half minotaurs called?
Do you mean the Centaurs or?
The ones from Forge World, the dwarf ones. They might be called centaurs. The one where it's like half.
Right, no, the bull centaurs.
Bull centaurs, yes, that's it. So basically, my Terrorgeist just waited there until some bull centaurs turned up and smashed it in the head, unfortunately. And then when I rolled to charge with my big unit of 9 flares, so incredibly elite monstrous infantry, these got incredibly good movement, but I was like, I really need a good charge roll to be able to charge the enemy and basically make sure all my guys can attack. And I was 3 inches away from the enemy because you have to be at least 3 inches away from the enemy, otherwise you're in the combat zone essentially in Age of Sigmar. And I roll a 4 to charge, and I was like, oh, that was so pain killing. So I only got like 2 or 3 of my models into combat out of like a unit of 9. And yeah, all went a bit wrong really. But like I said, a fantastic opponent to fight against, and it just shows when some people, because I think he'd been playing that army since like Age of Sigmar came out, so he'd been playing it for like 2.5 years non-stop, and it shows you play the same army, which I struggle with doing that on a regular basis. However, if you do that and you really commit to it, it really shows just how good you can become at the end of it.
Definitely. I mean, I've been playing my Skaven in Warhammer Fantasy now for about 2 years consecutively.
Yeah, I imagine you know the army as well as you can with Skaven. You know it inside out, don't you?
Well, surprisingly enough, I'm currently in an undefeated streak.
An undefeated streak?
Yep, I am 12 wins, no losses.
Wow, that is good.
For Skaven, yeah.
What's the secret? Like War Machines, is it? Or
No. Basically, it depends on the player I'm playing against. But like, I've managed to basically do with all the Skaven I've got. lists to be competent with fighting anyone. So say, for example, if I'm fighting a very heavily armored dwarf player, I'll bring a bunch of stuff which will pretty much take them out. So obviously the very, very, very needed Grey-Seer, because Dreaded Spell of 13.
Yeah.
Some anti-armor units. I won't bring a Hell Pit, as much as they're super cool.
What?
They just die. They just, like, a lot of dwarf players, as
Yeah, they
I've
come back
faced
to
them.
life, can't they?
Yeah, but if they've taken fire damage, they won't. And I've seen a lot of dwarf players bring fire damage. So I'll normally bring a lot of clan rats and basically use a lot of spell casting. The Plague Priest itself is very, very well needed with the Plague Furnace. It does vary. Like, I've been playing against Empires recently, and instead of bringing a lot of clan rats, I'll bring Storm Vermin.
Well, Storm Vermin are quite horrendous, aren't they?
Well, not so much, but they'll survive a little longer. And it just really depends. Right now I'm playing with a build with Storm Fiends, which I've just built up 3 more today.
Okay.
And I can bring up to, I believe it was 5 of them in my list, given the restrictions of Warhammer Fantasy Battle. And it's absolutely fantastic, because everything, you'll have to sit down and know the other races, obviously. My win streak has been working because, obviously, I've studied the books of every other army. And you'll have to kind of study the player, too. I could be playing against, like, for example, I've played 2 Ogre players recently. One uses a very heavy range build for Ogres, which is really bizarre. And then the other one uses a very heavy charge build. And I won't bring the same army for both. I'll have to work around and see what I can do.
Yeah. That's definitely it, though, isn't it? Studying the armies helps you so much. That's something I started realising when I've been doing the Army Archive for like, a few weeks now, or a month, whatever it's been. Just focusing on the other armies you've got to face, and just actually, instead of going, sort of learning the army from just fighting against it, when you actually study, like, what we have in Age of Sigmar called the War Scrolls, so basically the unit's rules, just by studying them, and even just by doing the videos and stuff and going over it that way, it's really sort of ingrained in your head, like when you fight them on tables, like, oh yeah, they can do this, and this is what they hit on, and all those other things.
Yeah.
You really do start to see a difference in your own performance.
Definitely. It's you can't just come in knowing your army, because a lot of people do that, and I find it really strange. Like, I'm not trying to put anyone down, obviously, but like, if you come in just knowing your army but not knowing what you're fighting against, you're going to be at a massive disadvantage.
Yeah, which is like when I fought, going back to these Chaos Dwarfs, I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing here. To be absolutely fair to my opponent, he actually explained what everything in his army did, but unfortunately, a lot of it went over the head. But yeah, that's why it's important to know. It's like something I get stuck in is I rotate my armies quite a bit, but my regular opponents, mainly fight Khorne, or they fight Nighthaunt has been a regular one recently, or Dispossessed, or Skaven, or Stormcast. So that's a few armies there, but if you fight those armies, that's the only armies you fight against, unless you're going against a tournament, you can get quite jaded, if you know what I mean. Like,
yeah.
You can get too used to fighting those, and then if you fight against something like the first time I fought against Zeech and had all these spells, I was like, and this is before I was taking the Gasha tournaments, I was like, oh, okay, so I don't actually control the magic face anymore as a death player, because you've got all these horrendous things you can do to me. That's changed a little bit now, but it's just the shock you can get a little bit when you fight against these new armies.
Definitely. Like, I'm so used to fighting dwarfs, because there's a lot of dwarf players in Gibraltar. It's actually really confusing. I don't know why, but everyone seems to want to play the Dawi, which, cool. But then I'll play someone else, and maybe a demon player will show up, and that will completely throw me off. We have a demon player in my first official event. For those who don't know, I have started doing leagues locally here, and we have some people coming down. It's called Fantasy Uprising, where it's Warhammer Fantasy based on 8th edition and 8.5. And we do have some people signing up with different armies, which is great. Like, we've got someone signing up with the Dogs of War, which hasn't seen an army book since 6th edition?
I have no idea, but yeah, it doesn't surprise me. I know it was quite an old army.
Yeah, but we do have the fan-made army books, which are pretty balanced, and he's signed up for that, and that completely threw me off. So I had to sit down, go online, check out the book, and go, okay, what am I up against?
Yeah, I'm absolutely not surprised, especially how some armies obviously have more in-depth rules than others, doesn't it? So it can be a little bit. That's quite a big revision session trying to understand. I mean, I know, like before I go to a tournament, I have to read the FAQs, which I absolutely dread because this basically the biggest changes that happen to rules. You'll see about it. You'll see it on Facebook where someone will be complaining about it or like praising it, whichever way you'll hear about it that way. However, when you've actually got to go down into the tiny little details, it's almost like it's like studying for something, Well,
Yeah,
it's literally like studying for a tournament, and it's like you got to read everything. It's like, and some of these FAQs, especially if you leave it quite a few months, they build up, and it's like,
totally. Well,
yes,
didn't the going to a different universe, the Space Wolves, didn't they have a day one drop for FAQs?
yeah, I believe they did. Yeah, yes, they did. Which is, I imagine would have been very annoying for Space Wolf players because if it's an FAQ, it means that something in the codex, I imagine, changed.
Yeah, no, I know a
So
local Space Wolf player, and he was so angry. I saw him in the shop. I was like, "Well, what's up?" He's like, "Oh, they FAQ'd Space Wolves," and I was just looking at him like, "Already?"
yeah, that is, yeah, that luckily hasn't really happened to me too much, but imagine if it does happen to you, it is very annoying because I feel like if you buy something, if I buy, let's say, well, okay, when I bought my Allegiance to the Gash Codex, which is basically the Death Codex, for lack of a better word, if you're new to Age of Sigmar, when I bought that, it's a battle tome even, as it's called in Age of Sigmar. When I bought that, I know at some point in the future this is going to become out of date. I know that, like apart from all the pictures and all the lore in this book, the rules are going to become useless. I realize that, at some point in the future that's going to happen. But I'm not saying that's what happened with the Space Ball stuff, but it's very annoying if there's a rule in your book that was literally you bought it yesterday because it came out yesterday, and that rule no longer means the same as what is written in the book. You feel like when you spend your money, you sort of want it to last for a little while. Which is, it's like that happened with me a little bit with the Legions of the Gash book because there was a FAQ I think about a month after it came out, and then basically it changed one of the battalions, which was, as far as I'm aware, the best battalion that was in that book, and they changed the rules to make it basically not very good anymore. It's like, well, that's annoying because if I have to remember what the rules are for that battalion, I can't look at it in my book. I have to try and go on the Warhammer community site, and then I have to try and locate the FAQ relevant to that battalion to try and find its new rules.
That's why I love Battlescribe.
Battlescribe, yeah. That's good as well. There's quite a few things out there. I've got the Age of Sigmar app, which is super good for Age of Sigmar, which is really handy. And yeah, but overall, I've been really lucky that I haven't really got much to complain against.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, well, yeah, fingers crossed. I mean, like I said, I started a Slanesh army, which it's going to be quite a heavy converted army, and I'm sure by the time I'm finished with it, as it's going to be a bit of a long project, Slanesh will get loads of new models out. But that's fine. I'll be okay with that.
Well, they've just done a release of new stuff, haven't they?
Of what news? Or what do you say?
New stuff for Slanesh.
They came up with a couple new units. So there's like a new hero, which is just something Enchantress, I think she's called. And they've got some new updated Fiends of Slanesh, which are very nice.
Nice.
Yeah, which is, they've still got the booby theme, but they're a bit more modern, shall we say. So that's all good. And the new hero for Slanesh is the one playing the harp. Have you seen that?
Yeah, that one looks amazing. I actually bought that specifically so I could use it in 40k.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen in 40k, like, the rules are horrendous, I think, for, like, I know, but to be fair, in 40k compared to fantasy, there's more rend, there's, like, quite often higher than she can do. It's pretty nasty, but I just love how how the strings just come from the spine of the guy. And it's like, I thought when Slanesh was going to get an update, I thought, okay, they haven't had any new models for a long time, so it's going to be a little bit more politically correct, if you know what I mean, for lack of a better word. And it's like, no, they're still pretty nightmarish, basically they're still they're still very sinister. They're not afraid to expose someone's spine and all that sort of thing, which is lovely to see, I think.
Definitely. I mean, they came up with that beautiful box too, the Realm of Chaos, Wrath and Rapture.
Yes, that's I've actually got that haven't got that box set, but I bought the Sinesh half for the box set. So yeah, that's lovely. I think I got it for around £40, I think. How when I went half to someone, and I got so the new hero with the harp. Got 3 Fiends of Sinesh in that box. 5, still learning the names. The Demonettes riding those. The tongue cavalry. And 10 Demonettes of Sinesh. So it's a really nice start, because basically what the Sinesh I'm plan to do is going to be State of Darkness base, so basically Warriors of Chaos base, and I want to have the Sinesh demons because there's a mechanic for you to summon them into the game. So basically there would be, so my army's going to be mortal, but for when they do acts that please Sinesh in the battle, Sinesh bless them and gifts them with these demons to help them out, which I think is quite a nice way of doing it. I think I don't know if many other people play them that way, and I don't know if it's a good way to play them, but I think it's quite a nice fluff way to do it, I think. Especially how I want to do the army, as I've called it, sort of like the Temple Sinesh. So it's very much, as I sort of show my last model, how I did with them, sort of like it's got a Greek theme to it. So I want them to basically, the mortals are basically worshippers of Sinesh, obviously, but they have their own temples and all that sort of thing, and like they don't see the creatures that they're gifted as like demons, from the warp and all that sort of thing, or the realm of chaos, but like mythological creatures that like have basically, like I say, been gifted to them as like an act of worship, rather than like these are just demons and an entity of a greater god. Which is it'll be interesting to see how that turns out, though.
It's fairly interesting. I understand the summoning mechanics, because we had a similar thing, and it's quite interesting. Honestly, the idea of summoning extra stuff, does it work within a point limit, or can you just summon as much as you want?
It was a bit risky at the start of Age of Sigmar, because like summoning was overpowered because there were no points, and then points came in, and then summoning was not very good because you had to pay the same amount of points to summon that unit in, and then sometimes you couldn't get to summon that unit in, but you had to save points to do that. Now in Age of Sigmar, I think summoning works very well from my own personal experience. How it works is that summoning it doesn't cost you army building points, if you know what I mean. But you will need to do certain things in the game to be able to summon it in. So it might be like your command abilities and stuff like that. So instead of your general command abilities, it might be, instead of doing that command ability, you can use it to summon in this unit. Now, which sounds really good. However, that command ability, you really might need it for something else.
Right.
And the unit you summon in might not be very good. So but if you keep on saving up your command abilities, you might be able to summon in something more powerful. That's just like a sort of an example of how it works. How it works for the the Lizardmen is they can summon things in if they don't cast spells. So it's very powerful for them to summon things in. However, you're taking a big sacrifice not casting any spells. Basically, the Slann are channeling all their energy to be able to summon things back. The Sinesh works on the lines of if you cause pain to the enemy, so if you cause damage to them but you don't kill them, you build up these points to be able to summon things in. So that's why I like it. So it's like I say, if you don't kill things outright but you're taking your time to kill it, you're making them suffer and feel pain, all that goes towards Sinesh, and that's what grants you these points to be able to summon things in.
Okay, it's a bit more fair then.
Yeah, which is nice. Khorne, he don't care. He doesn't care if his units die, your units die, how many other units die. For every unit that dies, he gets points where he can summon things in.
Awesome.
So some people just feel like really cheap units just to charge against the enemy, and they die. It's like, well, I'm still getting a point for it, which is cool. Legions of Nagash uses like wizards and stuff to summon back fallen units. There's that. Fleshy Courts can call upon like ghouls of the night and all that sort of thing to come in from board edges. What else? There's that Stormcast. They've got a few limited ways to summon because they can't be left out. And Skaven have got ways to summon. Only a few little ways, like the Dreaded 13th spell, stuff like that. But they've got ways to summon. Well, they've got the Screaming Bell that if you're lucky enough, you can summon a Vermin Lord.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but you need to roll two. So basically, the Screaming Bell does something in every in your hero phase. So basically, at the start of your turn, you roll 2d6 to see what. Well, you roll 2 dice to see what happens. And there's a chart. So whatever you roll, something happens. And like I think if you roll a double one, like basically the bell fucks up and takes some damage. If you roll a 13 on 2 dice, you win the game outright. But you shouldn't be ashamed by this, as you are a Skaven general. Despite that, this would make all other normal generals lose all their reputation of being a heroic warrior. But as a Skaven, you don't really care about that. But getting a 13 on 2 6s is quite hard to do. But if you get a double 6, so if you get a 12, you can summon a Vermin Lord. This is once per game, but you can summon one. And obviously, you can't really plan for it, but it's one of those things where it's worth bringing a spell along. It's worth spending £65. I think that's how much the moral cost, just to have another one, just in case.
Yeah, I've got 5.
You've got 5. Yeah, I wanna have everyone at some point. I've only got the Vermin Kin at the moment, but I will get all of them. But
They're gorgeous.
Yeah, they're lovely, and it's like I mean, everyone says just magnetize them stuff. So no, I need all of them on a shelf.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially the Eshin. To be honest, there's not one I don't like. You know how it's like there's 5 of them, so there's a strong possibility of me not liking one of them, but I have to buy it just so it fits the collection. But actually, all of them I really do quite like, and yeah. So going back to it, there is quite a few ways of summoning now, and it all sort of works out. Yeah, which is pretty cool, because it used to be, like I said, when you actually had to pay for the army points before you summoned it, and you might not even. So let's say I have a hero that can, like Neferata, how she used to be able to summon is that if she killed a vampire, if she killed an enemy hero with one of her melee weapons, but it had to be hers, not the like monstrous skeletal dog dragon she rides. If she kills it herself, which her attacks aren't the best, but they're okay. Then she can turn it into a vampire lord. However, you need to pay the points before you start the game for a vampire lord for when she does that. And then you play a game and she gets shot to death before she even gets into combat. And then you're not just losing her, but you're also losing the points of the vampire lord that you were maybe going to bring back.
Fun.
Or you got into combat and then it's like, oh, I'm going to try and kill this big hero and stuff, and then you accidentally overkill it with her mount, and you don't kill it with her own personal weapon, so you don't turn it into a vampire lord. So now, I don't think she still has that ability now, but I think she had it for a little bit when it was free, which was quite nice. It's like, it's quite hard to get off, but if you get it off, you get it for free, which is nice. So yeah, it also works out. But I think we've rambled on for enough now, haven't we, talking about...
Yeah.
I think we talked about Wood Elves for half the video. I think that worked.
It's something that's becoming quite common with us, isn't it?
It is, but you know, like it's good though. It shows how there's still quite a lot in common. But even if there's not quite a lot of common in between the two game systems, there's quite a lot in common to the both people who play Sigmar and Fantasy, which is always good to see. And yeah, so like I say, like if you're new to Age of Sigmar and all that sort of thing, and even if you don't like it, and you know that's fair enough, everyone has their own opinions. What I would say is that if you looked at it at the start and you thought there's no points here, I'm not getting involved, don't like it, all that sort of thing, if you haven't looked at it since, do have a look at it again, just because as a game wise anyway, it's a lot more balanced system than it used to be. And lore wise, yeah, like I've mentioned before, it's not up to the same standard as Fantasy yet. However, it's much newer, and the lore is definitely getting a lot better now, and that's why I really do love Age of Sigmar, and I sort of can't really back it up enough, really, I don't think, with that. But anyway, so yeah, I thank you very much for watching this, guys. I thank you very much to Nathan for coming on, and I know this will be on your channel, and if you're watching this on my channel, please do go on to look at the description, and I'll have the Great Book of Grudges link there, so please look at it. It does really nice lore videos, some of them quite long and going into like a whole army, and then some of them really nice in depth about individual like characters or places that you might not have heard much about before. So do definitely go check that out.
And if you're watching this on my channel, obviously I'll have a link to Age of Nagash down at the description below. if you're interested in new lore and new units and stuff like that, especially everything in the Age of Sigmar franchise at this point. He goes into depth in it. There's a lot of really cool stuff. I find myself watching him as soon as I'm painting my minis and so on, because while I might not play Age of Sigmar, I am interested in it. I am interested in seeing what's changed and so on, and I found this channel to be the best place to actually get this info.
Oh, thank you very much. That's very kind of you to say. But anyway, guys, I hope you've enjoyed our community chat and you've learned something about the Wood Elves and the Wanderers and all that sort of thing along the way. And until next time, remember, Nagash is all, and all is one in Nagash.
See you guys.